Thanks for joining me, everyone. Charles Moscowitz here. And my guest is James Simpson. He's the author of The Red-Green Axis 2.0, an existential threat to America and the world. James, thanks for joining me.
Hey, great, Chuck. Great to be with you.
Now, James, today is the first day of the impeachment hearing, so I think it behooves us to talk about that, reflect on that, what's going on with that. Why don't you start out?
Well, I got to tell you, I was listening to a little short video by Bill Whittle last night, and he was being asked, what do you think of these hearings? Are you going to watch them? Are you going to listen to them? Do you think these people should have you think this impeachment hearing should be conducted? He said, I'm not going to watch. I'm not going to listen. As far as I'm concerned, everything they're saying is bogus. The whole entire thing is bogus. It's just an entire, complete and total waste of time. And I agree with that analysis, frankly. This is a big opportunity for the press to get people to zone in on all of the channels to watch the impeachment hearings and boost their ratings and foment all kinds of opportunities for them to write articles about it and to continue this narrative that President Trump was engaged in some kind of, nefarious activity with the Ukrainian government in order to boost his prospects for the 2020 election, when we know that, in fact, none of that, not a scintilla of it, is true. And that's not merely according to all the records we have, it's according to the president of Ukraine himself. And so this entire narrative is manufactured, and I have argued ceaselessly, and finally, either they're listening to me or they're wising up. The House Republicans have gotten on the train to say, wait a minute, this is a complete and total deliberate misdirection. This is Russia impeachment, Russia collusion 2.0. And all it is, I mean, they said the attorney who represents the person who they call the whistleblower, Eric Chermella, who is not a whistleblower, he's a leaker. He's a deep stater. He worked with Biden. He was friends with all the Democrats, and he was the chief of staff directly underneath National Security Director H.R. McMaster, who was there who took that position. He was at the behest of John McCain, who was his Senate patron. Most people don't know that flag officers have to get their advancement voted on favorably by the U.S. Senate. So they have to get Senate patrons. And H.R. McMaster's patron was Senator John McCain, who was doing everything he could to defy Trump. And so H.R. McMaster kept on the Obama national security staffer, Eric Chermella, as his chief of staff. And in that role, Eric Chermella had access to every call President Trump made to foreign dignitaries. And he was a deep stater. There's absolutely no doubt about it. And this whole Ukrainian collusion narrative was cooked up after it came out that Joe Biden was interfering in Ukrainian elections on behalf of his son Hunter, because Hunter and his Burisma Holdings, the organization that for no other reason that he was the son of Joe Biden, had gone on to the board of directors of that corrupt organization, and he and his partner in it were taking him
Whitey Bulger's nephew. Yeah.
What? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Exactly. But taking him between $166,000 and $220,000 a month a total of over $3 million over a period of about 18 months for doing nothing more than providing the Ukrainian government access to Joe Biden. That was a quid pro quo. And when Joe Biden threatened to withhold $1 billion to the Ukrainian government unless they fired the prosecutor who was looking into Burisma Holdings corruption, that money would not be forthcoming. And he said it publicly in a YouTube video. I don't know.
Yeah. He actually said it in a speech to the Council on Foreign Relations,
right.
And it's available. And
right.
This is I think it's a major case of projection. That everything that they did is what they're accusing the president of doing. Devin Nunes, the ranking minority head of the committee, laid it out perfectly in his opening remarks, and he characterized this as being exactly that. Now, I suggested that the Republicans just boycott the whole committee. I don't know if that's a great idea, but let them have their little show trial and let them have their moment of thrill, their Trump hate, and everyone will see really what it's all about in that case. But either way, they've gone in and they're participating. And so far, what I've heard, and I've heard bits and pieces today of the testimony, is the more of the same that was said in private. And that is basically you have government officials, military and civilian, expressing dislike and dismay and opposition to President Trump's foreign policy. Right. Now, that's okay, to an extent, even though they're employees of the Trump administration. And I think that one can criticize President Trump's foreign policy. Probably not the smartest thing in the world with regard to his policy on Ukraine. I have to say, when I listened to the national security guy there, who headed the Ukraine office, it didn't sound like Trump was doing all the best things. However, he is the president of the United States. He sets foreign policy. They're not setting foreign policy. No, they're not there to criticize. If they want to criticize his foreign policy, let them write an op-ed piece or let them retire from the government and do that. But that's not what this is about. That Vindeman who showed up with all the military, fruit salad, his thing was basically that he thought that Trump's phone call was unwise. In other words, he didn't like the policy, which is not his place, and that it ran against the consensus of the national security establishment. Right. What the hell is this consensus? That's not what governs us. That's the deep state. Right. President Trump doesn't need a consensus. He's the president. He was elected. He sets the foreign policy. If you don't like it, then that's a fair thing, but he's not doing anything wrong. He's certainly not doing anything unconstitutional or illegal. This isn't like he went to war without congressional approval like Obama did in Libya. Right. Or like Lyndon Johnson, for that matter, tricked Congress into approving the Vietnam War with the Gulf of Tonkin resolution. Those are real impeachable offenses. Right. So there's nothing unconstitutional because that was a violation of Article 1, Section 8 that says Congress shall declare war. Right. Trump isn't declaring any wars. He's engaging in diplomacy. Now, his diplomacy might be a bit ham-handed, but he is the president, and that's what he has. He's not, they want to impeach him every time he does something that they disfavor. Now they're saying every time he says something, it's obstruction of justice. Every time he moves anywhere, it's perjury. Everything he does is criminalized.
They said they were going to do that right from day one. And in
exactly.
fact, the attorney for the whistleblower said in January 2017, now the impeachment begins. He said that in January 2017.
That's right.
And the left immediately began saying, this is time for resistance, right? And the resistance became visible on every television.
It's an old communist word, resistance.
And, blocked, for example, the beginning, right at the beginning, where they shut down the San Francisco airport to prevent, passengers from leaving or coming in to protest Trump's travel ban. Right from the beginning. But I think really important here, and by the way, you have to remember, and this is sort of lost in the shuffle, although Representative Jim Jordan mentioned it repeatedly in his questioning of Ambassador Taylor, that the foreign aid to the Ukrainian government was not withheld. It was given to them. And unlike the Obama administration, which gave the Ukrainian government blankets and prophylactics or whatever else they gave them, Trump gave them real military aid. And that was what they were wanting. And the new president of Ukraine, the new prosecutor of Ukraine, they are anxious to help in ending this nonstop corruption that the Obama administration was heavily involved in for a long time. And not only is it President Trump's right to ask them to help him figure out what the Democrats were doing in 2016 to interfere in our election, it's his duty. He's the chief law enforcement officer of the United States. It's his duty to do that. The Democrats have turned our nation into a corrupt cesspool. And President and Joe Biden or any other candidate, Republican or Democrat, does not get a free pass from criminal activity just because they are candidates. They don't. You break the law, you break the law. And frankly, if they are not prosecuted for these crimes that they committed in 2016 and continue to commit to this day to disrupt this president and to subvert our nation, our rule of law is gone. And without the rule of law, we don't have a country.
That's right. But I will say that I think that President Trump, in the phone call to Zelensky, probably in retrospect should not have brought up Hunter Biden, even in passing.
Maybe.
Not the smartest thing in the world to have said.
Maybe.
In the past, presidents generally let their subordinates do that kind of thing.
Well,
they don't mention it during a phone call when they know they're
doing it.
Yeah, I mean, that's his style, and it's not I don't think he did anything illegal or even unethical. He's asking them to investigate a corruption research that was stopped by Biden, and he's asked them to start it up again.
Right.
But it's the kind of thing that he probably would have been better off having someone quietly ask about.
Yes,
not to do it during a phone call where he knows that his arch enemies are listening.
That's right.
And that they might use it. And I think that a lot of that comes from Trump's background as a businessman. He's used to negotiating with other people. He's used to having a free hand in that negotiation. That's something that the establishment doesn't understand. Yep. It's almost a cultural thing. It's kind of a snob thing, really, that they don't communicate he doesn't communicate in the usual kind of clipped British accent type style, the authoritarian style, where everything is vague and everything is in sophistic double talk. Trump speaks plainly.
Yeah.
And and that's both his strength, but it can be his undoing when it is in the hands of his enemies.
That's true.
So that's what he's dealing with now. Now, I want to ask you, because this is going to go on. I think that the Democrats have burned the boats. They're going for impeachment. They're not coming back.
Oh, sure. No.
And they probably have all their members goose-stepping along. I don't think that. I mean, certainly here in Massachusetts, I don't see any of our Congress people, not voting for impeachment. It's just that's what they're going to do, no matter what. I mean,
no matter what.
So he probably is going to be impeached by the House. And they'll have their national orgasm and all of that, right? Let's be blunt.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen? I mean, Trump at the same time, his poll numbers are going up. The American people aren't buying this.
Yep.
The Democrats are going for almost a suicide for themselves, I think. What do you think is going to come of it?
Well, I'll tell you, it's not going to pass it's not going to pass the Senate. I mean, the Senate
Right,
will
that's right. It's
ultimately
not.
vote.
Exactly.
However,
Excuse me.
just to mess things up, and I don't have no idea what he was thinking, but Mitch McConnell appointed Senator Burr to chair the Senate, to chair the Senate Intelligence Committee, and allowed him to. I don't know if he's going to lead the trial, but Senator Burr has said the Senate impeachment trial will last 6 to 8 weeks.
Oh, my God.
So, in other words, they have legitimized the impeachment process rather than rejected it and said this is dead on, and as McConnell earlier said, this is dead on arrival. Now they're going to treat it as though it's something serious and actually allow a trial to go on. And this will just give the Democrats 6 to 8 weeks more to build this fraudulent narrative with the Senate. I don't know what the Senate's going to do. I hope there's some senators that come back and just make it out to be the absurdity that it is. But it just shows you how incompetent or worse the U.S. Senate is about all of this stuff. They just don't know how to fight, and I don't even know if they want to fight. It's sickening.
It is. It's very troubling, and I hope that as things develop in the House, they may change their mind, because this thing is becoming more and more obviously a false narrative. And hopefully people, average people, Democrats and Republicans, liberals and conservatives who care about the rule of law, they care about the fact that we have elections every 4 years, that we're not a parliamentary system that gets rid of our leaders with a no confidence vote, which is what they're trying to do here.
Yeah.
But that he is to serve his 4-year term. They don't like him, they can vote for someone else. That they're going to make sure that this doesn't happen. Now, the Inspector General, Michael Horowitz, is due to come out with his report
Yep.
any day. They say it could. They keep saying it's going to happen. It's going to happen, going to happen, going to happen. By which he's going to outline the source of this corruption in the FBI, in the Department of Justice, apparently in the State Department as well.
Yep.
And it's going to name several officials who have been involved in this whole hoax from day one. Do you think that's what do you have on that? Is that coming out? What is it going to mean? Do you think he's going to do it?
No, he's going to do it. When is a whole different question. The claim is that he is awaiting. It's going to come out about the same time that that the Attorney General Barr makes the announcement of the various indictments that have come out of the criminal trial of the people involved in this. Now, whether that's true or not, that's the hearsay. I don't know what the actual facts are. My guess is, what they say about Inspector General's reports is that's where controversies and scandals go to die. And what he did with the Hillary email investigation, the report there, it included, I read it, it was 400 pages long. It included many, many very damning facts about what the FBI was doing, many damning facts about the tweets between Strzok and Page, and many others. For example, when they were supposed to be, the FBI was detailed to go to the Clinton house in Chappaqua, New York, and look at the server and find evidence. And one FBI agent said to the other, "Yeah, nothing to see here. Move along now." And he was being sarcastic, like that. Those, I'm paraphrasing, but the idea was that they weren't going to question anybody, they weren't going to investigate anybody, and they weren't really even supposed to find anything. And he was sarcastically mentioning this to another agent. And So those kinds of things were embedded in the document. But despite that, at the very end of it, Horowitz said there weren't any, there were no, he did not recommend prosecution of anybody, despite that.
Yeah,
And even though he said that there were some, that potentially serious crimes involved, he didn't recommend prosecuting anybody. Now, it'll be hard to believe that he doesn't come out with that, if he comes out with that same kind of recommendation this time. My guess is he is going to be forced to recommend prosecution for Strzok and Page and a few other low-level people who, basically have already proven themselves guilty by the things that have been published about them. But he's going to avoid getting anybody that's serious. Remember, he's a Democrat, and he was appointed either by President Obama, I believe, and so he's, I'm sure, under a lot of pressure. But I do believe that Barr is going to come out with recommendations, begin prosecutions against higher level people. I would think he'll go as high as perhaps Comey, Brennan, and Clapper, unless, of course, they turn state's evidence, which some people claim they're already doing. I don't think he's going to risk going higher than that. I don't think he'll go after Hillary, although Hillary has clearly committed crimes, and he's definitely not going to go after Obama, even though Obama was the one who oversaw, probably directed, and definitely authorized all the stuff that they did.
Right. I mean, in a way, it sounds like Horowitz is going to do the same thing that Comey himself did with Hillary.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
come out with a weird press conference where he lists all these crimes that would send any of the rest of us up to crimes. And then at the end say, "Oh, but we're not doing anything about it." And meanwhile, she's apparently likely going to run for president again. Yeah. I mean, I think that she, in my opinion, I predict that she will run and that she will get the nomination, and then she'll lose to Trump again. Yeah. That's my prediction. To take it for what it's worth. But besides the Michael Horowitz report, you have John Durham, who was appointed by Attorney General Barr, who is a very, very tough, nonpartisan guy. Yeah. I mean, he's done research for both Democratic and Republican presidents. Right. Obama had him research corruption at the CIA in 2009. In Boston, my hometown, he did played a major role in cracking down on the Whitey Bulger mafia group. Right. He's very, no nonsense. Right. And he's just gathered enough evidence to convene a grand jury. And that tells me that they can't just convene a grand jury. They have to have criminal evidence.
Well, unless you're a Democrat.
Well, that's right. But here he is. They have it sitting. And that might mean, as you say, that people like Strzok and Page and maybe Comey, that they might turn. They might end up testifying to save their own necks. Right. So, I mean, when are they going to do it? I mean, if not now, when? I mean, this is crazy. They got to we keep hearing it's going to happen this week, that week. Right. I mean, this, it's like we're waiting for the cavalry to come.
Well, on the one hand, you could argue that it'd be a great time to do it now because it would take the spotlight off of the impeachment hearings. But I'm willing to bet that the only news organization that would cover it would be Fox News, and the others will continue to cover the impeachment hearings as though nothing has ever happened, because they have become so overtly, obviously partisan, so overtly part of this deep state effort to destroy Trump that they won't tell the truth about anything. I mean, look what happened with the ABC hiding of the evidence against Epstein. Well, not Epstein. The 3 years of was it Epstein or was it the Hollywood producer?
Weinstein, yeah.
Yeah,
Another
yeah. That
big Democrat donor.
yeah,
Made
that Veritas came out with the
yes.
the woman who had that evidence for 3 years, and she couldn't she
Well,
couldn't
because it would have
work on.
been it would have embarrassed the Clintons. This was in 2015
Yep,
that she said they have all these goods on the Clintons,
yep,
and then they said for the British royal family, well, they pressured them not to because they wouldn't get access, so they decided not to do that either.
right,
So yeah, I mean it's very corrupt. It shows it's really really troubling that here you have this major network. They've got plenty of money. It's not that they couldn't have afforded to do this investigation, and
right.
they basically quashed it under a very flimsy excuse that one of the people, the whistleblowers, had been essentially put under a gag order, which itself should have been investigated.
Yeah,
And the whole thing stinks. And yeah, I mean the media has become so corrupt and so obviously
ghastly. It's ghastly. Although it's nothing new. I mean, I've been arguing. Pat Cadell, great guy before he
yeah,
died, said the media was the enemy of America. And I wrote a very long research report for Capital Research Center with essentially that same headline, Media versus America. And it is. The media is the enemy of America. Without the media, the Democrats could not get away with any of this stuff. None of it.
would have been investigated. And it's President Trump. If there's one thing he's done is that he's exposed the falseness of the media,
Yep.
the dishonesty of the media. It's not that he
Yep.
doesn't want criticism that's legitimate, but
Right.
they make stuff up, and it happens over and over again. So
Right.
so here we are at the juncture of what can be a major, probably the biggest threat they've been able to pull off in 3 years of trying. And
Right.
after 2 years of the Russia hoax, which was covered day after day
Right.
by the big media, and I mean, I'd get news alerts from the Boston Globe where I live. I don't know, Stormy Daniels said this or something
Yeah.
like this. It's like, oh, and this is for 2 years, and now they have this one. It looks to me like they're getting as close as they're going to get. These are very, very powerful forces.
Yeah.
They're not, this is Trump has an enemies list arrayed against him, unlike anyone else.
Yeah.
I think because Trump is truly a counter-revolutionary figure.
Yeah.
He really is rocking the boat of this rotten establishment that has been gaining steam for the past 100 years. I mean, it's a colossal fight of the Titans, and it's almost going on under the hood on both sides. But now it's coming up in public, and it's all out there. It's horrifying. It's also exciting, but it really is something that is going to be a hinge for the future of this country.
Yeah.
It's an
existential threat.
It is.
Threat. If they win in 2020,
Democrats and the never Trumper Republicans, who are even worse, in my opinion.
yeah, they're just
People like Mitt
anyway.
Romney, by the way, whose son is also on the board of an oil company from Ukraine. From what
Oh, is that so? Yeah.
And so is Nancy Pelosi's.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't new. And by the way, there are other Republicans that have this.
And by the way, John Kerry's stepson, I can't remember his first name. His last name is Hines because, of course, he's the actual son of the Republican Senator Hines, who was killed in a plane crash before his wife turned and married John Kerry. He turned down the opportunity to join Hunter Biden and the other guy. His name escapes me.
Archer.
What's his name?
Devin Archer.
Devin Archer. He declined the opportunity to join those two on the board of Burisma Holdings. He didn't want to have anything to do with it because he thought it was corrupt. And so, and there you have it.
But they got Whitey Bulge's nephew. Anyway, it's a rotten situation. This is the very definition, because they like to say that President Trump is involved with emoluments, which they don't really know what that means. Right. It's basically taking a gift or a favor from a foreign nation, personal gift.
Right.
When this is exactly what they're doing.
This is exactly what Joe Biden did. If you ask me,
and others,
if you ask me, what Joe Biden did was bribery and extortion. And there's specific laws that he violated. And if I can find it, I forget. Oh, here it is. Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, including bribery and extortion, 18 U.S.C. Section 201B and C. Penalties include up to $5 million in fines and 20 years imprisonment. I think he should be looking down the barrel at something like that, because it was crystal clear that's what he did. And see, that's why I think
at Obama, probably at Obama's behest.
Oh,
And also there's this other investigation besides the John Durham grand jury,
yeah,
and besides the Michael Horowitz investigation,
right.
there's a third investigation that's going to be finally coming out by this guy Huber. I don't know if you're familiar with this.
No.
It's not as well known, but he was appointed at the very beginning of the Trump administration as
by Jeff Sessions.
That's right.
Yes,
and
yes, yes. The Utah, the
Clinton Foundation.
Yeah.
He's investigating the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton and these other rackets, the Global Initiative. And you want to talk about emoluments. I mean, the New York Times covered the story of the uranium deal, where a Russian company in Canada put, I think, it was something like $300 million into the Clinton Foundation account after Hillary gave the green light toward the sale of 15 to 20% of America's uranium supplies to a group that's largely owned by Vladimir Putin. And not only that, but the whole deal was signed off by the head of the FBI, who at that time was none other than Robert Mueller.
Yeah.
So, this is an investigation that is going to be coming out. They flew Bill Clinton into Moscow also and gave him a check for $500,000 for a 20-minute speech.
An hour-long speech, whatever, yeah.
And I think that investigation could also lead to some indictments.
Relevant to the question you asked before about when is all this stuff going to come out, we all thought that Sessions' appointment of this Utah prosecutor was bogus, because it went on and on and on. And, you hear all of these things. You get all of these rumors in the internet. He's got 1,000 people on his list of, people he's investigated and all this stuff. And it's really reflects nothing more than a bunch of very worried people expressing their hope that something will eventually happen. But I have since learned that while all this stuff was going on, while President Trump was lambasting Senator Sessions, and actually I knew this just from the contacts that I have, that he was under the radar looking into this stuff, and he basically didn't have anybody in the DOJ to support him. I mean, everybody around him was fighting him. And so this was, he felt like he was under siege. That's one thing. And the other thing is, and I think this is the most important thing, and I don't know what's going to happen with that Huber investigation, that particular case. But one thing I'm certain of, whether it's Barr or Durham or Huber or anybody else, if they're going to actually bring a case in court against any of these people, that case has to be so airtight that nothing, not a speck of light can get through, because they're going to have to take that to a court, and many of those courts are already saturated with Obama, Clinton appointed judges who are not judges at all, but partisans who will throw it out of court just because they're partisans. So they have to come forward with airtight cases, and they have to be very careful, dot every I and cross every single T to make sure they have an airtight case, because otherwise it's going to be a waste of time, and they'll wind up with egg on their faces.
Well, I hope you're right, that they really are taking the time to make sure that they have airtight cases. I mean, we can't know. It's all being done quietly. I mean, this whole thing is all, as I say, it's like this clash of the titans, all done under the radar, and
Well,
you and I, we can only find out little bits
yeah.
of information.
But I believe General Barr recognizes just how critical it is. I believe he understands that if they don't get convictions for some of these things, our nation is lost, because it will basically be saying that one political party has no fear of the law, that the one political party can do whatever it wants. That's the definition of a dictatorship.
It is, and it's these are very interesting times, as the old saying goes, and we should talk again and get into ongoing analysis as things unfold.
Sure.
Can you talk, Jim, a little bit about your book and where people can get it?
Oh, absolutely. So, if your audience can see it, the name of my book is The Red-Green Axis. As you said earlier, an existential threat to America and the world. Is it clear, or is it out of focus?
A little fuzzy, but up there, okay.
And let's see, trying to get it in focus, kind of difficult, but anyway, it's available at Amazon, and it's the second edition of my Red Green Axis series. The first one was subtitled Refugees, Immigration, and the Agenda to Erase America. And both are available as free PDF downloads from the Center for Security Policy website. That's securefreedom.org. So if you don't want to buy the actual book, I always prefer to have a hard copy book in my hands to read, to underline, and to keep as a reference. But if you just want to read the book, you can get a free download from the Center for Security Policy website. Excellent. And but it's probably, it has more statistics on the refugee and immigration, every aspect of the refugee and immigration program than any book I've seen yet. It covers all kinds of costs, including non-money costs like crime, and languages spoken in public schools. My favorite chart is the first one, which details that there are over 400 languages today spoken in public schools. Some public schools have as many as 120 or more languages, and with up to 40% of the student body not speaking English, but up to 120 different languages. How on earth do you provide a decent education to kids? And the thing is, all of those 120 different language speakers are not paying a penny. The additional cost, which I also detail in the book, is being shouldered by American taxpayers who send their kids to these schools, and their kids come out with a very, very poor education, in addition to the fact that they're all being indoctrinated now with all the various leftist agendas. So it's really, really horrendous what's happening here. But unless you have a kid in school that's facing one of these things, the general public just doesn't realize how devastating this system that we have of both legal and illegal immigration that is deliberately targeting our voting base, because the real reason we get 1 million legal permanent residents a year, primarily from third world nations, 85% of which are not employment-related immigrants, but rather family reunification, which is a polite way of saying chain migration. All of these were designed by the Democrat Party, the laws that they passed, to bring them a ever-growing voting base, which is changing the demographics of this country. And if it continues, the Democrats will get unbeatable majorities at the state and national level. And I guarantee you that will be the end of our nation.
Yep. I mean, I think that's already happening. I mean,
Yes, it
this was
is.
this
It
was
is.
the Ted Kennedy legislation back in the 60s,
Yep.
and
And the
it's
1980
already
Refugee Act, which is also Kennedy's authorship.
which act?
The 1980 Refugee Act, which
Oh, okay.
created the modern refugee resettlement program.
It kind of expanded the definition of refugees,
Oh, yes, yes. Oh,
and as you say, resettlement, and
yep,
this is what's given us a victory for the Democrats in Virginia.
yep,
So
absolutely.
it's already having manifestations, and it's a big, big subject. We should do this another time,
Yep,
and really devote some time to this and really go through it because it's key and it's important. All
yep.
right, James Simpson, I want to thank you for joining me this afternoon. Interesting interview. Let's continue debate, discussion, and analysis as the news unfolds.
Great. Thanks so much for having me, Chuck.
All right, take care.